Persians first, Greeks, then Romans. So we know Rome came in there, conquered it, and we have the Greco-Roman era. Now people think this is so far-fetched, but how is it far-fetched to believe that everything we've seen these people do throughout history? Why is it so hard for Black folks to believe that they cooked this whole thing up? Why is it hard for the Black Hebrews to believe that they created this entire doctrine? Because you guys think it's just so magical and holy that there's no way the white man created it. They stole it from you, but then gave you the truth to give it back to you. So they stole it from you, changed it, you following it, and you believe that the changed story is the true story. Which is it? You guys are confused as fuck. Seriously. Because you have to think about what you're saying, right? So it's one of the reasons why they want to believe King James was a Black man and he gave us a true book, even though after that, it was edited and they left a bunch of books out. So you got to pick and choose what you want to believe, but the history is what breaks it all up, right? So talked about this before. You had the Greco-Roman era. You have Rome coming in and basically changing everything when they took control, right? So I read this last time. It says the Greco-Roman period, 332 BC to 395 AD. That's long. Think about what I just said. 332 BC to 395 AD. And I gave you guys your biblical manuscripts going back to the 2nd century AD. So we're talking about all this time, right? New Testament written in Greek. All right. So marks the end of Persian rule over Egypt. And then we're talking about the Greco-Roman period. It was over, in the 4th century BCE. So as far as the Persian rule. So marks the end of Persian rule over Egypt. The Persians who came from what is now Iran were defeated by the Greek conqueror, Alexander the Great, who occupied Egypt and founded a new capital city at Alexandria. When Alexander's empire was divided after his death in 323 BC, his general Ptolemy acquired Egypt and established the Ptolemaic dynasty. Greek was the official language of Egypt under the Ptolemies. Greek influence in art, administration, and military organizations continued for the next 300 years. The traditional gods were still worshipped, but new gods were also introduced. That should be game over right there, man. Like, come on. New gods were also introduced. The Romans gradually began to intervene in Egyptian affairs in 30 BC. They conquered Egypt. It became a province of the Roman Empire. Roman influence affected every part of Egyptian life, from household utensils to religion. Roman emperors continued to be depicted as traditional pharaohs on temple reliefs, right? I broke all this down. I talked about all this before. So even before Rome took over, the Greeks were doing the same thing before, right? The Greco-Roman era. So I showed you guys Serapis. I showed you guys a million times this picture here, this relief. I took this picture myself in the Cairo Museum in Egypt. And I showed you, this is Serapis Christos. You guys know who this is. So we have the worship of Serapis, who was a god who looks like Jesus, that they were forcing on the people. So we already have documented proof that the Greco-Roman, the Greeks and the Romans, were forcing the worship of gods in their image on the people. And you think it's a coincidence that this dude looks like Jesus. And it's just, how are you guys not putting this together? Right? So the thing is, one, you're thinking Egyptian, right? But we know that this also continued. Rome conquered completely, meaning Rome specifically had control over Egypt around 30 BC, right? It was no longer really Greco-Roman, even though it lasted up to the 4th century AD, right? But it was specifically Rome in there, and it was dealing with their issues with the Persians and the Arabs, when you understand. So I broke this down before where I showed you guys the worship of Serapis continued out of Egypt into Rome, right? And we had temples, entire temples dedicated to Serapis. I showed you guys as well, the worship of Serapis existed in Judea. Remember, the reason why Hadrian basically killed all those Jews, supposedly over 500,000 Hebrews, was because, remember, they wanted to build another temple to Serapis in Judea, and the people wasn't having it. So this worship existed. And you have to ask yourself, it's one of these things where common sense come into play. Why didn't the Jews accept the New Testament? right? Because if you're walking around pushing the Old Testament, right, and the New Testament comes in and you have this biblical figure. Now, we wasn't getting the depictions until later on, but clear as day, like if back then they seen the depictions we have now of Jesus, they would look at it and say, well, that's Serapis. It's not Jesus. So you let generations pass before you start introducing these images in. But they were worshiping outright Serapis, and the worship is everywhere. So I gave you guys references. Here you go right here as well, where you had the worship of Isis and Serapis happening in the same temple, right? So you have Hadrian's temple. Remember, I talked about, read how he basically walked across the street to go and worship Serapis in the temple. This is in Rome. This is in Rome. So you got to put that history, that connection together, and you see what happened, right? So you have with the New Testament, before that, you have this conquering supposedly of these Jewish people, these Hebrews. And then we get this New Testament, right? These people are exiled, scattered, everything that supposedly had happened. And we get this New Testament featuring Jesus or what have you. So you got to look at the history, understand where this stuff is coming from, and that these black people who you guys believe are the biblical Hebrews are not. They are indoctrinated Africans. Now, in the same video I showed you guys at the Cairo Museum, I showed you guys 2 different gods that the Greeks had created. I showed you guys Zeus Ammon, and I showed you guys Serapis Christos. Serapis looking just like Jesus, or Jesus looking just like Serapis. So what makes you think if they created these gods and introduced these gods onto the Egyptian people that they didn't create Judaism or Christianity? Why would they allow Judaism to exist if they're pushing Zeus Ammon and pushing Serapis Christos, which clearly spread all the way from Kemet into Rome, where there are statues still there today, and we don't see any of any Jewish gods, Jesus or what have you, dating during that time. So why would they allow the religion to exist if they didn't create it themselves? Black people who was in Northern Africa, the land that we call Israel today, they occupied that space. These people were indoctrinated once it was conquered by the Greeks, by the Romans. It was indoctrinated and sent out to spread that message. This is why you have them showing us all these old paintings of the prophets being black, because everybody was black over there. And they indoctrinated the black people and sent them out to spread this word. When the history is showing up, it's not showing up past the 3rd century BCE. Everything is suspect after that time, right? Well, before that time, I should say. So everything you're seeing fits within that time frame of conquest of the Greeks and the Romans, right? They indoctrinated these people, sent them out. Just gave you guys proof. You can go look all this stuff up. The statue still exists in Rome today of Serapis. Still there from ancient times. There is no statues of Moses from ancient times. There's no statues of Jesus from BC or ancient times. You don't get statues until way after. So if we have the known worship of Serapis, where there are statues, and supposedly these people were walking around, giving their lives, being persecuted and everything, pushing Christianity, there is no statues. And the Jews who were supposedly given all kinds of tolerance and everything. This is why the story is cooked up that they destroyed the temples. They destroyed it. You see how they have to make up for a proven history by saying all this stuff was destroyed. Yet, once Christianity dominated, they didn't destroy the statues of Serapis. They still exist. They didn't steal a lot of the Roman gods' statues or the Greek god statues. They still exist from BC times. But everything else was destroyed, we're supposed to believe, or was it converted? So these are questions you got to ask yourself. Like, I debate with people so much about this subject, and it's just, I'm tired of debating. Hebrews, you got some of you guys are very intelligent, and I made this video because I said I would, 1. And 2, because it's just real easy if you want to go and look at the history and what happened and see what took place. But you guys are so stuck in the Bible. You got these people on cue. Read this verse as if it's proven. And you sit there and scream the verse out loud and say it proudly as if it's proven. The book itself is in question. It's in question. It's not proven. It never was. So in all these older books, these books that people are not reading, it's giving you all that history. And this is why we call people YouTube and, Google scholars or what have you, because you guys don't go deeper into the research. Even if you Google something, which I'm not completely shunning you guys using Google, but I see the flaw in a lot of you guys' work and what you're doing, which is why I always show you in Google as well. You guys can show me something on Google and say, see, then I can just show you the complete opposite as well and show you guys where, as I put up books in this video, to show you where you can actually go and get from real scholars, from older books, and see what it's actually talking about. Now, again, you can't fault Google for giving you more, elaborating more on the topic, which is what it does, but that is not proof. I broke all that down in the previous video, where you guys have to stop doing that and taking what it's saying and what it's elaborating on and understanding that when it says, evidence, archaeological evidence, right? When it's saying the historicity or historical context or historically accurate or what have you, none of that means proven. It just means evidence. It's just evidence to the point. It doesn't mean it was proven true or that it's 100% true, or else it would say that. It's not. So this whole thing came about is because of this and this history of the, I didn't want to make a whole video on the freaking Cyrus cylinder because it's a joke, because it's a broad term that it's speaking to in that cylinder where it's talking about just people, everybody. It's not specifically talking about you, it's talking about everybody. And they piggybacked on that. They jumped on that. You can see what they're doing. Let's find things in history that exist and then make up a story where we can fit it into this archaeological evidence and say, it's talking about these people. Where nowhere in the entirety of ancient Persia do these people in any language mention Jews, Hebrews, Israelites. Not at all. So think about that. So again, it's up to you guys. You can keep doing this song and dance, but it's no proof, man. This is all by faith. You have faith and you believe in this stuff. There's no proof. So I broke down the manuscripts. I broke down the stelas. I broke all this stuff down. It's like you're, again, missing out on so much information because you guys want to stick to this. The Hebrew Israelite doctrine is made up so you guys can basically, take yourselves out of Africa and leave it alone. So you can get away from North Africa. You can hate the Egyptians. They hate your past and everything that you should be loving, you're hating right now. And that's stupid. It fits them, not you. So yeah, I hate going the whole spiel over and over again, but there's so many people who, it's 2025. I thought we killed this shit. But people are not doing, it's just more people just not doing research or not looking. But again, I understand Deuteronomy 28 is very powerful, right? And if you don't understand anything, then you're going to read it or you're going to listen to somebody break it down to you and it's going to make sense. Deuteronomy 28 in the King James Version, and every version after that was written between 1604, 1611, or when the Bible was revised in the 1800s up to the 1950s, and you get what you got. And this is one of the reasons why I tell you guys, get yourselves an old ass Bible. This is from the early 1940s. This is an old Bible, right? Early 1940s, it is different. In the back of this book, they tell you all kinds of stuff that, the world is only 4,000 years old or 6,000 years old, where all that stuff comes from. It gives you dates, right, for the books of the Bible. So Genesis, supposedly, they give you the time frame of when Genesis took place. And in the back of these old Bibles, they're giving you dates, right? They're giving you dates. You can see where Genesis supposedly took place from. 4,000 to, 1635? Come on. We got trees older than that. So Genesis supposed to take place between that time frame, which we know is bullshit. It's giving you also who wrote what Gospels, and it's telling you unknown in some cases. We don't know. And in some cases, it's completely wrong. So this is why the older books are good to have, and you have to know how to read them and know how to put it into its context. Also, I broke down with the Masonic Bible, how you guys can know and understand how it's different from the King James Version and why this even exists. The fact that the book exists should tell you something, right? The fact that this exists and these people are supposed to be the most evil people on the planet and everything like that. Why does this exist? What's in here? Why is this different from your Bible? And again, this is just more insight into everything. Now, you have smart Hebrews who want to separate the Old and the New Testament. Or some of them going to lie and stand on their lie and say, I don't believe in that Bible. I'll go back and look at the, the whole Hebrew manuscripts as if they had them. But we know with the Hebrew manuscripts, completely changed, can't be trusted, just messed up, right? Again, the manuscripts as I broke down is not proof of anything. So yeah, you got to understand it's a lot to look into, a lot of information, right? And one of the reasons why you got to keep doing your research and just not acting on faith or what have you. And it's just crazy to me, man. I feel bad because so many people who just looking for the truth and they get caught up in this Black Hebrew Israelite nonsense, and now they all militant and they believe in some shit because they believe somebody who basically conned them into the whole thing. And it's a sad thing, man. I feel bad because it's Black people doing this to other Black people, knowing damn well it's some bullshit. And the amount of hatred that they spew towards Africans and Black people and shunning Africa and everything like that because of this doctrine that they have no proof, that's completely bullshit, is crazy. So because I have so many videos on this up, you have a lot of people who are running into it now. A lot of people hitting me up. The doctrine is still out there. People still talking about it. And, I'm going to try to keep putting out videos to make people more aware of what to look to. Deuteronomy 28 makes sense. It fits. It is completely talking about Black people in slavery in America pertaining to Black people. No fucking way around that. But again, understand, King James Version was written 1604 to 1611. Slavery was already going on. So the stuff it's talking about, they already knew what Black slaves was going through. It's not a book that was written over 2,000 years ago by Moses, and it was a prophecy, and they wrote it 2,000 years ago, and they knew what was going to happen to Black people. No, that shit was written 1604 to 1611 when they already knew. So, and then if you believe in that book anyway, saying that King James was Black, then you know that already. How, I understand. Then you know he was commissioned or supposedly had a spirit put on him, and they gave us the King James Version. You know when that was written. It's not from, over 2,000 years ago. But people want to believe that spirit was put on him, and he was given that doctrine, that message, and the scribes were as well, to give us this historically accurate, version of, the Old and New Testament. This bullshit, it's bogus. So Deuteronomy 28:68 is not as old as people think it is. It's a prophecy. How? It is something that was written down. It's a story that was written down pertaining to Black people that they already knew. Now, all this DNA, E1, B1, Igbo, and all this stuff, all you're proving, all you're saying is that the lie is old, right? You can try to separate DNA and all the bullshit y'all want to do and say, oh, Africans are completely different from Black people in America, when this is a proven fact that we come from them. What's wrong with y'all? And that your genetics change, your climate can change your genetics. Your climate can change the way you look, the way you appear, right? Proven fact. Climate change, the climate changing can directly change your genes over time, right? It's evolution, right? It's what happens. We no longer need certain things because the climate is different. So we have these changes. We don't need the darker skin. We don't need the bigger nose. Right? We don't need the woolly hair as much because we're in a more balanced climate versus a climate that's hot all the time, baking like Africa. So it's not that we're genetically different from them. It's just a change that occurred in us from them because of the different climate. That's all it is. This is a proven fact. So again, this is so much hate rooted into the doctrine. And it's blinding people and it's making them look even more ignorant. And that's all it is. So you guys got to understand where you're getting the message from and where to look, plain and simple. So it's up to you guys. Keep looking. I got a lot of videos on it and, check them out. But yeah, thanks for taking the time to watch. See you guys next video. Peace.